Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is the Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. Four topics today, titles, subjects, and before that, today's 9/11, and a big day in humanity's history. And in terms of why am I sharing this with you, it's because I was in Zurich, Switzerland, teaching Pilates in a studio, and heard that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, tower or something. It's like I imagined a Piper Cub, and when it became more obvious that things were much more serious, and the world was at a state of war, it seemed like, I make note because Joseph Pilates was in England, I think, boxing. But he wasn't in Germany when World War I broke out. And that's why he got interned, because of the timing of where he was versus when it happened. And for me, it comes home to the whole thing about Joseph Pilates being a survivor. His method is survival training, conditioning, and period, I guess. Where I was going with that was, and being able to do the mat work. Being able to do the mat work. So that life is interrupted, and you can't control where you are or what your circumstance is. Doing the mat work, doing something you're familiar with, is a good thing. It's settling. And then doing something you're familiar with that is a conditioning of the human being in coordinating their capacities of being, thinking, and observing. When you engage in doing the mat, you gain that clarity for yourself. And the doing of the mat work itself, the reciting of the poem, is conditioning and preparation to be ready for whatever comes up next. See? There's a lot of advantages about being able to. I'm thinking of reciting a rosary, and I don't mean to be religious, but therein is a practice of sequentiality, of recitation, and exhortation of good things. Maybe exhortation is too strong a word. Number one, understanding is reached is the title. Understanding is reached. And to reach it, you have to want to go there. And that's why, how did you reach your understanding? Or how did you come to an understanding? How did you get there? How did you reach an understanding? Within the MMP point of view about familiarity being necessary to find engagement, to find more out of your effort. So understanding is reached. And, that was a much milder version of talking about I guess confidence, where your confidence comes from. And your confidence comes from the level of understanding you've come to altogether, not just with MMP and CT, but all of it resides in you under the simulation that you're running on reality, and is your creative brush to make an impression on that reality. When you reach an understanding, it's not so much that someone granted you the understanding, as much as you reached it or you got there, and having gotten there, it's more a matter of you having gotten there than anyone granting you the understanding that you've reached. I'm trying to say it as a Pilates instructor, that's a high wire act in many ways, right? And I think your understanding and your confidence comes from what you can sensationally tell the difference in. Okay? And when you can sense the difference in yourself, in your own performance of doing Pilates, you take that knowledge and that experience, you have that knowledge and experience to presume that you know what you're talking about. That's what I was trying to get around to. You can go around and get whatever kind of external indications of knowledge or capacity, right? Degrees, certifications. You can pursue education formally, which is a good idea, and be picky. But for me, to you, the point of view of MMP is that there's an ideal within Joe's original work, and that you can embrace the pursuit of that ideal to achieve an experience which is what you're after, which is Joe's definition, which happens to be an experience that happens in the moment. It's a now thing. And everything else, the voluminous side effects or after effects of the pursuit of doing Pilates, just fill the book to the point where everyone wants to come do Pilates and wonder what the doing of it means to get the most out of it for what it has to offer. And see, in quantum physics, because observing is non-local and superluminal, so it seems, according to Bell's theorem, in the exercising your capacity of observing as a human being, as well as thinking and being, and have it targeted toward, concentrated on the purpose of the exercise, without that, there would be no reason for any of this, I think is what Joe's saying. And so it's important to understand that as an instructor, that even Joe is pointing to something essential, and that essentialness within MMP is observing. And observing is listening, is looking, is concentrated. Even though, to me, concentrated, the mind would want to presume that all that concentration happens just within itself. But the concentrated on or from is from outside of the mind, and that's either amygdala, hippocampus, or a broader range of sensation. And whether it's a field or not, who cares, and does it matter to your interest as a Pilates instructor to survive or to accomplish an experience that you're aiming for? Right there. Mother Teresa, Arnold Schwarzenegger, no difference. Both human beings. And MMP and CT limits itself to a consideration, limits itself to a consideration to the human body. I mean, you can, all of Pilates is extensible, right? If you really want to own Pilates for yourself, if you want to claim a confidence from an authority that you presume off of the direct experience you have, right? It's much easier having a connection to that experience, which gives you a direct connection to the artist and their art, right? So number two, I think it's number two. The conversation is all in the hips. What am I going to say about that? So my way into my reformer workout is to do the 8-inch roller on across my back, to lay on that roller with my hips in the air, so it's my feet flat and shoulders anchored, and from there I cup my skull and make a stretch on my cervical spine. And like reading tea leaves, my challenge is always to be listening with intent to what comes out of that experience, because it's very consistent and yet different in expression. It's a good way to say that. The second thing I do is the ball, just laying over the ball to get release of the lower spine, to get expansion in the lower back. So, a release. And from that release, the coming out of it, where I'm talking about the conversation is all in the hips, when I come out of being prone on the ball, just relaxing and stretching, I have my feet in the Pilates V turnout, but more hip width than not, and rock myself off of the ball, trying to sink into the gravity feeding down through the hips, to where you don't need the ball anymore, and you surrender the ball and just allow gravity to work down through your squat. And to me, there's so much that goes on there to listen to that's sensational, and what stretches and what's tight, and I try to use my inner arms to apply tension outward, to stretch more of the inner thighs. So there's a lot of conversation to me in the hips, just in a gravity feed release into ideally what any human being would be able to do, and just squat down and be balanced and have use of arms and be able to eat from a bowl of rice or steak or whatever. And I guess in that particular exercise, I'm much more oriented toward letting gravity feed through the hips, seeking release, stretch within the pelvis and inner thought, all of it, right? Number 3, the mat is a poem, and the mat is Joe's poem. And if you want to do Pilates, recite his poem. And I've seen a lot of presumption that without knowing that Pilates has any essence of its own, it's easy to and fun to just take it wherever you wish. But this poem of Joe's is a choreographed sequence of movements, of exercises. And the presumption of changing the order or adding exercises or taking exercises out, all of those alterations to Joe's poem are different than Joe's poem. And I'm not saying that whatever he was is a perfect statement and encompasses everything. But it makes a definitive statement in what it is, just from his one book alone, Return to Life. No relation. The co-author of the book was named Miller also. And there, in terms of survival and dramatically getting caught in a country that you don't live in, and the world is at war, and there's no way I was going to travel. If I had travel plans for that next day, which I didn't, 3 days later were my travel plans. But wherever I had gotten hung up, if I really wanted to ground myself, I know there's meditation and you might not be able to break out into doing the mat work in the environment that you were in, but if you had an environment in which to do the mat, you're conditioning your body for whatever comes next. Actually, you're conditioning yourself, because the human being has capacities in body, mind, and spirit. And within MMP, spirit is observing, and that makes the pursuit of Pilates the pursuit of a connection to the universe faster than light. Which sort of plays into the field theory of observing, and that as a field, somehow it doesn't get entangled with the physics of mass moving through that field. I don't know. Number 4, tension. Maybe I can get more specific in this. First of all, in MMP, tension is a good thing. Or actually, tension is what it is, and you want to use it in a good way to achieve a good result. There, I said that pretty good. Now, bad tension causes stress, one way to look at it, and good tension relieves stress. And good tension uh, so in the mat, hundreds, roll up, roll over, leg circles, rolling like a ball. Right? I hope that's right. And in the rolling like a ball, something different happens in the exercises that went before that. And that is that the arms, the hands connect to the shins. Okay, so this is MMP, and this is MMP's way to look at it, and why MMP looks at it that way. Okay? And it all comes down to reaching for uniform engagement, uniform development, uniformity in developing the body. Uniform, 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 because it's in Joe's book right after he defines his method. When it comes to rolling like a ball and hands on shins, in MMP there is a dynamic tension of the shins pushing out against the palms pulling in to develop a deeper grip at the hip. It's that contact points of hands to legs that allow you to use tension to go deeper in your grip. It's as simple as that. And you do that all even up in space, and then you tear space in half and you hold the grip on one side while you reach the load of the other leg out into space without losing the grip at the hip that you built up and rolling like a ball. And without letting the axis of rotation that your hips are controlling be distorted by the leg that's reaching out. So that, you know, if that's your hips, it's hard to do. Like this, okay, close enough. If that's your hips, right, when you do the one leg stretch, you don't want the leading leg to get longer. You don't want the axis running between your hips to deviate, because why? Because it's less control, right? In the two-leg stretch, you're just adding more weight. That's part of the loading of it. But you come into and out of that dynamic tension that you create by pressing your shins against your palms and your palms into your shins. And what are you doing? You're using that connection to, in your body, create the tension that not only goes deeper in the hips, but allows you to engage your shoulders and the axis around your ears as well. So my interest in making comment about tension was that from the MMP point of view, so just within that point of view, we use, or that point of view approaches contact with the body between its appendages as an opportunity to create tension that facilitates the nature of the engagement that's creating that tension. Pretty cool, huh? Scissors, you know, not in Joe's original choreography, right? But the mat work has gone from single leg stretch and double leg stretch to embracing something, wanting more, I think more in Romana's time than Joe's, but to add more loading went to scissors and double leg stretch. And there's an example of exercises that fit in the theme of loading and progression, just loading, and stuck because they belong there, or they're an ideal extension of what already exists. That's just a point of view. But you get scissors and double leg lower lift and then elbow to knee. In the first two, to use more weight and just mirror the prior two exercises, but with straight legs, which makes the load heavier right off the go, right? And so that's the loading issue between the first two with bent knees and the next two with straight legs. It's a matter of weight and loading. And you better have used all of the exercises that allowed you to create intention from contact points between limbs. Because then when you get to the double leg stretch, you better have control of your core, your grip at the hips, because you have straight legs, and it's a matter, see, oh, that's a good point. It's a matter of you to listen to what you can feel and know the range that your legs can cover without losing the control of the grip at the hips, right? And you know this. The deeper the grip, the closer the grip, the closer the strength of the grip to the shape of the grip that's making it. That was redundant. Something about, though, the size of the grip is relative to the size of the hand that's making it, or toes, if you will, but the tighter the grip, the more control. And in doing these exercises, they feed off of each other. And again, this is the MMP point of view, which takes for granted you've reached an understanding of core nutension. And maybe not, because you can take MMP as a point of view and ignore core nutension, but like, why would you? And in the acceptance and embrace of core nutention, you get what you're after in uniform development, because it's through core nutention that you get uniform engagement in the body. My opinion, the point of view of MMP. And so when there's these two leaps, right? And better to make the leap to core nutention, because then Michael-Miller-Pilates isn't that much further beyond. But to try to absorb Michael-Miller-Pilates as a point of view, and then try to back up, or then try to add in core nutention, it's, I think, out of order in presentation. Contrology develops the body uniformly. I hope I said that right. Yeah, I think I said it right. Look it up. Know it for yourself. And so that was like number one. The thing I was talking about was understanding is reached, and it's reached because it's gotten to the understander. That's funny. But the person who comes to an understanding, that's who reaches that. And reaching is not done by proxy. I mean, I can't do your hundreds for you. So that comes from somewhere. And, you know, I can't make understanding for you. I can't grant you understanding. I can give you a certificate that says I think you understand, but outright granting of an understanding is something you reach. And how do you reach that? Well, you reach it through having some sense of familiarity and go from there. All right. Uniform usage to get uniform development. Uniform usage to be developing uniformly, because contrology develops the body uniformly. And so that means more than just about what you get. That means that in the effort of the doing, and you know this, right? It's a whole body thing. But if it really is a whole body thing, then it's time, maybe or maybe not, to take this giant leap up to acknowledging the body has the ability to make rotational, dynamic within itself. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add two and two. Direct your thinking.